And I'm joined now by Christina Fink for insight on Myanmar's political situation. She's a professor at George Washington University in the Elliot School of International Affairs. Interesting, Aung San Suu Kyi actually wrote a letter of apology to her supporters, which you don't see that very often. And she's still really unhappy about how this thing played out. How is any of this going to work?
Well, you know, I think the military was in power for almost 50 years, and to expect that the military would be willing to just hand over power to their arch enemy was a big ask. And so she has made an agreement that she will not be the president, but she will basically be the person behind the president. The president will be a proxy for her. And over the next 5 years, she hopes that she will be able to convince the military that having her be the official president would be the right decision.
And the proxy likely to be Tinja. What do we know about him?
Well, he's a very close colleague of hers. He's been working with her more on a personal basis for the last more than 15 years. So his family is also close to the NLD. His wife is a member of the NLD and a parliamentarian. His father-in-law was one of the founding members of the NLD, and his own father was also a democracy activist and a famous writer in the country.
And the rule basically excluding her from this is that her children were born elsewhere and have British citizenship, correct?
Exactly.
Any chance that this can be amended at any point in time, you think?
Well, potentially it could be amended, but the military has to agree to that. They hold 25% of the seats in the parliament, and the Constitution was written in a way that makes it very difficult to amend. You have to have more than 75% of the parliamentarians agree to amend the Constitution. So without military buy-in, it's not possible.
The peace process is very important to her. She's making that a high priority. We know that there were talks back in January, but the interesting thing about it is if you think the political situation's complicated, start talking about the fighting.
You're right.
You've got so many players out there, and several of them excluded from the earlier talks.
Yes.
Where is that process, and how difficult is that going to be?
Well, it is difficult because without the military's agreement, the peace process can't really move forward. And that was a challenge under the last government, and the last government was much closer to the military than this government. So Aung San Suu Kyi and her party have a big job ahead of her to persuade the military that really stopping this civil war through political discussions and instituting federalism in the country is the right way to solve this problem.
And it's interesting, we're talking about big stuff, but as Dave pointed out in his report, that there's arguments between the party and the military over parking spaces. So, and it's tough for us to look at that seriously, but talk to me, because I know you've spent time in Myanmar. Where is it today? Where was it when you were there before? And where does it need to be?
Well, the country's made a lot of progress. You know, in 2011, they handed over power to a semi-civilian government. So the military still has a large role in the government, but there was an elected government. Most of those people in that government were former generals who'd retired. But they made a lot of efforts to move toward democratic norms, and they were much more responsive to the needs of the people. They put a lot more money into development in the country. And so the economy is doing better. The media is relatively free. You have civil society organizations who are able to operate openly and interact with the government. And so things have improved, but there's still a long way to go. I mean, the country is basically decades behind other countries in the region, despite the fact that it's rich in natural resources. So sound management can hopefully help bring this country back to where it needs to be.
One can hope they can work out the parking spaces arrangements and then tackle the big stuff, right? Christina, thanks so much for coming in. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.